let's have a dinner where who cares how much money you make or how Aunt Jenny is being annoying, or, let's just, enjoy each other's company.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband Steve and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. Hi, Sunshine Parenting listeners. I have some really exciting news to share. My book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults, comes out on May 7th and is available for pre-order now. One of my favorite endorsements from early readers of the book came from one of my parenting education heroes, Dr. Michael Thompson. He says, Happy Campers is a joyful and wise parenting book. Drawing on her lifetime of experience as a camper, camp counselor, and camp director, Audrey Monkey shows us what is most important in the lives of children. She then takes the next step and teaches parents how they can recreate the magic of camp in their own homes. I have never read a more optimistic and well-grounded guide to parenting. For pre-order information about my book, visit happycampersbook.com. You'll find links to all your favorite book retailers there where you can pre-order your copy. Once you've pre-ordered, complete the pre-order form, and I'd be excited to send you some fun freebies, including the first chapter of the book in PDF form. It's called Camp Secret Number 1, Connection Comes First. I'll also send you an invitation to join my private Facebook group where I'll be discussing happy campers and sharing all kinds of resources, videos, and chats. Thank you so much for pre-ordering your copy of Happy Campers. I so enjoyed chatting with Jessica Joelle Alexander of the Danish Way of Parenting for this episode of the podcast. She's in Rome and I'm in California, and our internet connection sometimes wasn't great, but I think the words still come through fine. But please bear with us a bit because there are a few times where there are glitches in the sound. Well, I'm so happy to have Jessica Joelle Alexander, co-author of the Danish Way of Parenting, back on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
So where are you right now? Because I know we're talking to each other from opposite sides of the world.
Yes, right now I'm actually in Rome. I'm living between Rome and Copenhagen at the moment.
Okay, because I remember that was when we talked a few years ago, you were in Rome as well. So that's your main residence where your kids go to school and everything?
Exactly, yes. They go to an international school actually, but yeah, our main residence is here, but our business brings us sort of back and forth between Denmark and Italy.
Okay, wonderful. How old are your kids now, Jessica?
They're 10 and almost 7.
Well, a few years ago, I'm trying to think, I believe it was maybe 2000. When did the Danish Way of Parenting come out? What year was it?
Well, it came out in the US in 2016. It was published, but it was originally actually self-published in 2014, I think. And then it was picked up by a big publisher and launched in 2016.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that I talked to you in 2016, and it was when I don't even think I had started my podcast yet. And we just did the interview and I recorded it because I wanted to take notes later for my blog post. And then later I just kind of turned it into a little podcast episode, but this is our first actual real podcast interview. So I'm excited that we can talk about it. And I'm so happy to have you back on. I've been following your work ever since I met you back in 2016 and read The Danish Way of Parenting. So I'm thrilled to have you back on. And I know people will love to hear just all the ideas and some of the new things that you have going on as well.
Well, thank you.
So Jessica, just because probably most people didn't hear our first episode, can you just tell a little bit about your background and how you ended up writing this book and starting this website and everything?
Yeah. So I am married to a Dane and I have been for about 18 years now. And I've always actually been living in different countries. And interested in cultural differences and studying cultural differences. My background is psychology. I speak several languages. And when my kids were born, I became really fascinated by Danish children. I noticed in Denmark, kids just seemed just really respectful and calm and happy. And I had read so many parenting books trying to prepare myself for the journey. And I found after they were born that I was preferring all of my Danish family and friends' advice to the books I had read. And so slowly it just became like my go-to, it always just seemed to work the best. It made a lot of sense. And of course I saw how well it was working with children in Denmark. And I didn't think about it. It just was, what I was doing. And then one day I remember we were on vacation. I was reading the newspaper and I saw that Denmark had been voted as one of the happiest countries in the world again, and that it had been for 40 years in a row, always in the top 3. And at the same time, my husband was playing with my daughter and he was doing something that for me was very sort of Danish way with her. And I had this light bulb go off in my head and I thought, oh my God, I think they're happy because of the way they're raising their children. And, so happy kids become happy adults who raise happy kids. And I had seen it myself firsthand. And I didn't know this about Denmark, that it was always voted as the happiest country. So from there, it was just like, I felt I had to write this book because honestly, this style of parenting had helped me so much as a person and a parent that I was totally convinced it would help other people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it really does. And it's so interesting. I told you before we started recording that I had never heard the term Hyuga, which is and now it's everywhere. There's all these books about it. There's articles about it. Kind of everyone in the world knows this term. It's spelled Hygge. It looks like Hygge, but it's really, you pronounce it. So how do you pronounce it for me again?
Hygge.
Hygge. Okay. Hygge. It's such a great concept. And, it is true, the studies about the happiness in Denmark. One of our camp counselors did a broad study there. She was a psychology student and she also studied it. And I agree with you 100%. It's not just about the parenting. It's the lifestyle and the things, the way they choose to spend their time and live their life that is getting these really positive outcomes and well-being for everybody. So why don't we talk just about the Hyuga first, in case people aren't familiar with that term and what it means, and how in Denmark that's just such a big part of life.
Yeah, it's funny. So the book it's 6 chapters based on the acronym PARENT, right? So it's play, authenticity, reframing, empathy, no ultimatums, and then togetherness and Hygge. And I, being married into the Danish culture, it's probably one of the most used words in Denmark is Hygge. You cannot have a conversation without somebody saying something's hyggelig or Hygge. And so I was really fascinated by what it is exactly. Now, the definition that people are using is it's like a feeling of comfort, it's conviviality, it's like a welcoming intimacy. Unfortunately, I feel like in many ways it's sort of been commercialized. So it's all about like the cozy blankets and the warm tea and but for me, that is absolutely not what the crux of Hygge is. I think Danes describe it that way because it's so ingrained in them culturally that they only see these sort of external signs. So like lighting candles and cozy blankets. But I actually feel like it's much more of a psychological space than a physical space. And so what do I mean by that? So I've been observing it for many, many years. And my husband has a really big family. It's like 17 people. And we would be together for really long periods of time. And there was never any drama and there was never any negativity. And I was thinking, how is this possible? And even when I would talk to my mother about it, my mom is American, she was like, what? There's never any like issues. There's nobody. And I thought, yeah, that's so strange. But the more I paid attention to it, the more I realized that I think for Danes, what Hygge is, and I think the real reason that it creates more well-being is it's about entering into a psychological space together. And there's this sort of unspoken rules that they know because they grew up with it. But like if for non-Danes, I think you have to sort of be aware of what those rules are. And so, for example, when they enter this space, I describe it like, imagine you're taking off your negativity, you're complaining, you're bragging, work stress, Everybody helps out. It's a team effort. You focus on the moment. You do things that keep you present together. And when everybody sort of agrees to this, then you have these wonderful moments of connectedness. And we know, and I created something called the Hyuga Oath, which is like a list of some of these things, like, turning your phone off. There's a big popular term now, mindfulness, right? We're all talking about mindfulness. I describe Hygge as we-fulness. So it's like it's really recharging. And the biggest beneficiaries of this time together are the kids. And you really see how much they love being with their families when there's no drama and there's no negativity. And like you play games, or Danes like to sing a lot, or you talk about positive memories from your past, because this is very connecting in the moment in something positive. Yeah, so for me, Hygge is really more about the psychological space we create with the people that we love or care about, and respect these moments. And it doesn't have to be always, like it can be an hour, it can be a dinner, it can be, you kind of choose it. I mean, you can complain and, be negative many, many other times. It's not that you can never do those things. It's just that you create moments where it's about we time, not me time. And I mean, I swear this has completely changed my American family. We are so much happier that we have implemented this in our life. I mean, I can't. It's really special. So, of course, candles are fantastic, and hot chocolate and cozy blankets. But like, I'm from Florida originally, so we don't need to do all that to create a Hygge.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All the things on Instagram are like the picture of your feet up by the fireplace with the tea. But I remember from talking to you, it wasn't about that. In your book, and I guess it's in towards the end of the book, there's this whole list that's so great. It's tips for togetherness and Hygge. And it starts with taking the oath and being in the moment together and having fun and singing, and such a great list of things. And it looks like maybe it's also on the Danish Way website, right? This list perhaps. But this way of living is just such an important thing for people to think about. It's weird now that we have to remind ourselves to be in the moment. I think that's strange, because I think back to, a time before we had all the distractions that we have now. And that was the default. When you were with someone, you were just with them. And so it's interesting that now we have to work a little harder and think a little more about doing the things that we all need for our well-being, this connection piece. As you were talking, I was thinking about, are you familiar with Susan Pinker's book, The Village Effect?
No.
Okay. The reason you might be interested in it is because she studied a village in Sardinia that has the most centenarians, they live the longest. And in her findings, it was that it didn't have to do with the healthy lifestyle. The number one predictor of longevity was social connection.
And I think what happens with a lot of families is like we have bad habits. There's a lot of families that have habits of complaining, right? It's sort of almost an unthought of default setting that we think is connecting, but it's actually subtly dividing. Or, bragging. I mean, the thing I really opened my eyes about Hygge was I noticed with my Danish family, like they didn't ask a lot in those moments, like, what are you doing? And, you didn't talk about sort of what your successes were or any of those things, which for me was maybe a little more common in my American families, and family and friends. But it was the same if things were bad in your life. So what I mean, it was like, it's like an oasis.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's creating a space where you just can be. Nobody cares what you're doing. Nobody cares if you're successful or if you're a failure. This is your space to be together. And that was really eye-opening for me, And I think it's really wonderful. And I think that would help a lot of families too, because sometimes, maybe someone's not doing so well in their life and maybe they feel weird to come into a family gathering. So it's, and the thing is, it's all about just a little bit of awareness.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting because you're right. People connect in some way, and it can be a negative thing. And I see that sometimes with parents of campers, that what their default thing is, what went wrong and how can I jump in and rescue you, rather than, what's fun and what's going well. Because in life, as we all know, every day is going to have its ups and downs. But if you spend more time thinking and focusing on the things that went well and what you're grateful for, you lift up everybody's spirits who you're around. And so that's such an important concept, is like creating that culture in your family where you are connecting, just having fun together and over positive things. And it's not always about the worst thing that's going on. I love that concept so much. And I also just love that idea of not trying to measure up in any way and just being. What a great concept. Let's talk a little bit. It seems like another reason that Danes are so happy is all the play and the singing. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you observed with that whole part? You write about it in the book. It's your very first chapter. And, now it's getting all kinds of research or backing that we all need more play, kids and adults.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yes. And all this stuff. So you were ahead of the curve on some of the things that are now.
Everybody, Danish Way of Parenting.
Yes.
But it's so funny because I was inspired by it because for me, it was just so sensible. It made so much sense, the things they were doing and the response from the children. And I think what it is that, so in Denmark, it's not a very commercialized society. I don't know if I told you this when we talked before, but they don't let just fads come in, right? So all the latest new this, that, and that, they're very if something's been working for them, they keep it. And because it's not so commercialized. And for example, free play has been an educational theory in Denmark since I think 1871. And for them, it is the most important thing a child can do. It is considered learning. It is, it's nothing about can they read, can they write, can they do all these things early, because they know that they will learn those ththings. But for them, play is learning, as Mr. Rogers famously said. And it is crazy to me that so that was for me at the time, but when my husband, I remember we were talking about our childhoods and I said, well, I did this. I was doing music and I was doing this and that and this and that. Well, what did you do? And he's like, well, I just played. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. No. But what did you do? I couldn't get it. He was like, I played, And so that was a big eye opener for me. And so, yes, wrote the book years back. And now it's just crazy how the American Pediatrics Association is now recommending play, prescribing play, all the things that are coming out now about increasing play in schools, how it's reducing ADHD and how it's improving, behavioral issues. So again, sometimes it's funny to think that just these simple things like play or being outside or simplifying is really what we need.
I know. That's my message. I'm always telling parents, don't worry. You don't need to read a bunch of books or do any crazy things. Some really simple things that you implement can make a huge difference in your family. And that's what I love about your book. It's very easily applied. It's simple tips that parents can really just use to make their family more pleasant for themselves as well. Make it more fun to be a parent, I think. I love everything about it. And, we talked before just how, to me, it really resonates that, I think summer camp and the whole culture of summer camp is very much like the Danish way, because so much of it is about playing together, being together, having fun together, and kind of losing all those measurements, not worrying about sports things and academic stuff. It's just being yourself. And a lot of kids will just say, they'll say, I just feel comfortable and relaxed and I can be myself. And I think this is what our kids need everywhere, at home,
yes,
at school.
Can I say that I've read your book?
Oh yeah, no, please. I'm starting to share it with everyone. It's available for pre-order now.
I was so excited to read your book because, when I spoke to you back in 2016, I remember you get it, when we were talking about Hygge and we were talking about some of these things. And in Denmark, a lot of kids go to forest kindergartens. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yes, you told me about it and I looked him up.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I want everyone to go to forest kindergarten.
Yes. But for me, camp in everything you write about is it is the Danish way, right? And so I think if parents, because it's going to be a while before we really, I know there's a shift happening also towards social and emotional skills and play and all these things, but it's going to be a while. But I think one of the best things parents can do really is enroll kids in summer camp. I think it's giving all the things I'm talking about in the Danish way. And you're saying, it's building up so many skills that we're not getting anymore because kids just don't have time. It's everything's an activity and everything's to prove something to somebody else. And, it's about a grade or it's about performance. And I think it's creating a lot of anxiety. So this ability to go and be outside in nature, which we now know, like a big study just came out from Denmark about, like being out in nature reduces like mental illness, something like 45%. Kids that grow up in nature, and that can be anywhere. That can be parking, that can be the forest, that can be, but yes, being outside, learning how to do things with their hands, learning how to be with other kids. It does so much good for them. And, you see it in your campers, how happy they are when they go home, and parents see the difference. And yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover between
Yes. That's why
that mentality.
Yeah, that's why I loved your book so much. I was like, wait, this is all camp.
This is camp.
Camp is Denmark. Yeah, no, it really, I do. I see a lot of similarities. And I think the basic thing is that it's a simple method. It's not anything complicated. You don't need to layer anything more on top of what you're already doing. So parents don't have to feel overwhelmed. Instead, it's like a shedding of a lot of these things that they think they're supposed to be doing, and just kind of getting back to just common sense simplicity of, wow, we can just hang out together and have nothing on the schedule and just be together.
Challenge I feel in America. I was actually just there. I was just in America, and I feel like the biggest challenge is how to dial it back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I feel like this is the biggest challenge parents have, because we've got so many things piled up and piled up and piled up, and we feel the pressure from other people. We feel the pressure of what we're supposed to be doing. That actually I think one of the hardest things is to just say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let my kids play. I'm going to not overschedule them. I'm going to fight back on like if they get too much homework when they're in the younger grades. I feel like that's one of the hardest things, is how to shut out all of that pressure and believe in the simplicity.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But it's so valuable, because obviously if you're pushing your kids so much and you're overscheduling them and you're unhappy and they're unhappy, it doesn't matter if they have like academic success. And like in the end, what's more important is being a happy person with good relationships. And that leads to success. When you're a good friend and you work well with others and you have great social emotional skills, you'll do fine in whatever job you end up doing and whatever school you end up going to. And I think sometimes people are very caught up in sort of these measurable things that really in the end are not what lead to a good life. So
no, it's trying to get away from the measuring. That's the issue, because it's so hard for many people to like believe in something if they can't measure it. But that's why, like, I think I was so inspired when I read, Denmark's the happiest country in the world, and has been for 40 years in a row. And now Finland is a global leader in education, which is very close to Denmark. They have very similar styles. So if we want to measure something, and we all want to be happy, and here's like the happiest country in the world, a global leader in education, where there's free play until 6 or 7 years old. There's no homework until they're like 11 or testing. It's like, well, that is a measurement. That's 40 years measuring. So I feel like that should be enough to make us like reconsider. It's interesting. In Denmark, one of the things that they really push is the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. So like at the beginning of school year, they talk a lot about this. And basically, I used to think they were the same self-concepts, and they focus a lot on self-esteem, a little bit less on self-confidence. So the way they describe it is often like self-confidence is the things that you're good at. It's like your grades. It's the things you can show, it's your diplomas, etc. Whereas self-esteem is like how you feel about who you are. Am I a good person? Am I okay with myself? And they often describe it like a tree. So they show the tree, and the leaves, the top is your confidence, and the roots is the self-esteem. And so you can have a tree that has huge foliage, which is grades hanging off and diplomas hanging and, all the things you can prove to everyone else that you're good at. But if your self-esteem is small, because it's all dependent on those leaves, when a storm comes, that tree's going over. And they work a lot on building up like how you feel as who I am. They have an expression which is at hvile i sig selv, which means to rest well within yourself. And so it's like, I'm okay for who I am, no matter what those leaves are. And I think it's like you were saying, when you have when you can rest well within yourself and you feel okay for who you are, you can do anything, especially nowadays, because learning is at our fingertips. If you have the desire and the wherewithal, you can do anything if you believe in yourself, I think. It's such a new world now. But of course, real happiness is that ability to sit with yourself, no matter what.
Yeah. And how many people are there that have the kind of outward looks of success, even adults who inside are not feeling good. And so I love that. I think that I see the tide turning. I think people are getting it more now that, this whole feeling of how we're feeling about being ourselves and kind of embracing ourselves and our own strengths and who we are, and not being so concerned always with those leaves. I know it's hard because it is easy to see those things, but wow, if we can shift this where everybody's just feeling good, that self-esteem piece, those roots, our kids, families, everyone will be so much better. I love that. Jessica, I want to just switch gears really quick. I want you to talk a little bit about I know it's coming out in a while, but I'm so excited because you've written now about the Danish Way of Parenting. And now your next book, which will come out hopefully in the next couple of years or whatever, is called The Danish Way of Education. And I want to tell you that I've already shared many times your Salon article about the cake hour and how one of the things that they do in school in Denmark is basically it's Hyuga time with your class and connection time. Can you just share a little bit about that? Because I know quite a few of my listeners are teachers or coaches, and I just want them to learn this idea of connection time in whatever setting where you're working with kids.
Yeah. So the book is very much, it's education. It's focusing once in schools, but it's also at home, a bit like, you're talking about camp, but you're talking about what you can take home, right, from camp. And basically one of the things that they teach is, it's basically empathy, but they don't call it empathy. They call it the class hour. And essentially it's an hour for Hygge, right? So it's an hour that you dedicate to the class, right? To the class's well-being. And it's nothing to do with academics. And they can do many, many different things during this hour. They often bring a cake. Somebody bakes a cake or, brings in some kind of baked goods, right? So it's very much, again, like a bit of a team effort, like Hygge. And it's a time where they can really talk about what's going on in the class, talk about any issues they have, listen to each other. And the teacher's job is not to take sides. They're more like a facilitator. So it's very much about making sure people feel heard. That's really where the sort of empathy is coming from, right? Because empathy is all about being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And we don't think so much about training that. But for them, it's one of the most important things that they like to train and teach. And they'll sometimes give they do well-being surveys. So they check to see what their happiness level is and they talk about it. And, they'll do some outside activities, but it's basically all about improving something that's called fellesskab, which I'm talking about in the next book, which is basically this feeling of connectedness, of belongingness. And what they found, they did a study of 300,000 students and teachers, is that in any school, when the level of fellesskab, which is this feeling of belonging, was high, everything else was better. The students' grades, students' academic performance, motivation, happiness. So this is one of the main focuses in Danish school, is to make sure they have a good fellesskab. They feel each other and they really work on it in this class hour,
Oh, love that so much. I just have to say, the first chapter of my book is connection comes first. And that is just my same philosophy, is that everything else will fall into place if you just first address this whole feeling of that people feel accepted, they feel like they belong, they feel part of the community. And so whether it's your family or camp or school, we've got to get that connection thing down first. I love that. I cannot wait for this book. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah. And again, it's I've been sitting in on a lot of these class hours and I'm blown away. They're so simple. And sometimes I've seen the lesson plan and I think, okay, this is not but it's actually, they get so much out of it. I can't even believe how much the kids love it and how good they feel about it. And I actually implemented this, I called it the Hygge hour. I've implemented it in a couple of other schools, in the international school and a couple of other schools. And it's the same thing. The kids get so excited about it. They look so forward to it every week. It becomes such a highlight, and it just improves everything in the class. So it's funny, again, something so simple, just to dedicate an hour to the class, and how they feel together, and just talking together and like listening to each other. And, and sometimes they have these sort of talking points where the teacher can prep them for certain situations. But overall, like I said, it's really about learning to listen to each other and respect each other and hear how the other people feel. Because a lot of times, what surprised me was when these kids started talking about their experiences, like on the playground, or why someone felt sad or why someone didn't play, the other kids were really like, they had no idea that they felt that way. It was like really enlightening for them to really understand that, oh, that's why she didn't play. She felt sad, Yeah, it's really a great concept. I mean, I hope many schools will adopt it.
Oh, me too. It would be so helpful, because I think just that feeling, if we can raise people who can listen and empathize and see what's going on with other people, the world will just be such a better place. So let's get the whole world to be the Danish/summer camp way, right?
Yes, I love it. Let's collaborate. This is like the movement.
Yes, we'll take over and change everything. So Jessica, this has been so much fun having you on again. I'm going to put links to everything that you have out there in the world, your Instagram, your websites, and then people, if they want to hear about the book, The Danish Way of Education, is the best thing for them to sign up for your email list?
Yeah, if you go to jessicajoellealexander.com, you can find a lot of these articles we've talked about, and I will be sending out information as it comes out. I also have an Instagram account, so Jessica Joelle _ that also has a lot about the Danish way. Yeah, and as soon as I know the launch date, I will be announcing it, letting you know, and hopefully
we'll do another podcast episode for sure.
Spread more Hygge and fællesskab and all these unpronounceable words.
Yeah. I love it. Jessica, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jessica and will research a little bit more about the Danish Way of Parenting. You can either pick up a copy of her book or look at the website. And links to all of this information will be in the show notes for this episode, which is episode 78. You can find it by going to my website at sunshine-parenting.com and searching for episode 78. I really enjoyed reading the book, The Danish Way of Parenting, and it's such an easy, quick read. In my version, it's only 103 pages and shares some great insights and simple ways that we can all incorporate more of the Danish way. It ends with these words. We believe that together, parents and teachers can support each other in promoting the Danish way to raise happier, more resilient kids. We all need support. By building a community together with the goal of practicing these tenets, we can cultivate some of the happiest people in the world in our own backyards. We hope you'll get on board and help us make it happen.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.